Today's Youth Sunday, and you're very glad that you're in here and not in the bridge. Just trust me, because they're recreating Crave and Intersection, and so there's some game with fudge and marshmallows, and I'm sure there's spam. We normally involve spam in most of those games. So if you'd be over there, you'd have to listen to all that loud music, and then, it's better that you're here. And I'll probably let you out earlier, hopefully. We'll see. My name's Dusty. I'm one of the youth pastors here, and I get to work with 7th through 12th graders, and it's just a blessing to be here. I've been here for about 2.5 years, and everybody's out of town, and they normally try to keep me out of here, and so they're gone, so then they have to fill it with somebody, so just joking. I've been cued and prepped by John. He said that anytime I need to make a serious point that I'm supposed to do this. And that if I'm not really getting enough emotion out of you, if you're not crying just yet, that I've got an Andy Griffin clip that I can play, and Opie and Aunt B will bring it out of you to tears. So, we're continuing in a series, and this is the last week, called Radical. And what we've been looking at is that there's radical claims of Christianity, and that what the gospel says for us in our lives is very radical. I mean, Jesus says crazy things like, leave your family and come follow me. He says, sell all you have and give it to the poor. And so there's radical statements about Christianity, and we're trying to figure out what that means as a community. And so last week we looked at radical thankfulness and how we're supposed to live lives full of radical thanksgiving. The week before we looked at radical holiness and how that's what that calls us to do as Christians, how we're supposed to let God mend us and put us together as we're being set apart. This week I want to talk to you about something that's just really on my heart, on my mind right now, and it's called radical salvation. We're going to look at what does it mean for us to radically follow after Jesus in such a way that changes the whole world. And what did he say about salvation that makes it radical, and what is our response? You see, I've always had questions about salvation. When I was young and in like 3rd or 4th grade, I knew that salvation meant, in my faith tradition, that you got to get baptized. And so the goal was to see who in our Sunday school class could get baptized first so we could say that we got to go swimming at church. And I thought it'd be cool, this would have been way cool, if I get to do the cannonball into the baptistry thing and just get the pastor wet, all that stuff. I mean, I figured that would go real well with my 4th grade reputation. And then in middle school and high school, I got saved like 4 times, I think, at youth camp and stuff. And we would live bad the whole year, and then we go to youth camp and get convicted in the hellfire brimstone stuff, and so we didn't want to lose if we died tonight and all that stuff. And I still had questions, though. I didn't think that was what it was all about. And then when I got to college, I was at a Baptist university, and I don't think I was a Christian there for a couple of years, and then I started... I'm just joking. And there everything was black or white, and I was tired of asking questions, and so I was like, okay, either I'm a Christian or not. This is saved or unsaved. Either we're going to go to heaven, or it's, turn or burn, and we're all going to, weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth talk. But I don't think that was quite the deal either. And so lately I've been reading some guys and listening and seeing part of the conversation that's taking place that's asking questions about salvation. And trying to rethink and reframe some things, that salvation might not just be all about us. And that salvation might not just be a way to get good fire insurance so that we can eventually get to heaven and live like hell here on earth. It might be more than that. Salvation is radical if you think about it. I mean, an innocent man dying on a cross for the sins of the world, past, present, and future, so that we could be restored into a relationship with God. That's radical. I mean, it's massive. It's huge. And we see that from the pages of Genesis to Revelation, it's filled with this salvation story of God desiring for a relationship with his people and thus saving them from the mess that they've created. Salvation. We see that God rescuing his people from the Egyptians, whether it be through plagues or frogs or boils or locusts or taking them through a Red Sea and parting the Red Sea. Salvation. We see that David is screaming out to God when he's under the attack of King Saul. When he's running from his enemies, he's praying that God would be his refuge, his strength, his strong tower, that God would deliver him. We see that in the prophets that God had these messages for the people, and God would say, you have to turn to me because I promise you that this is the best way to live life. We see that in the New Testament, all of a sudden, salvation has a face in Jesus. And that face sees a woman caught in adultery, and when people are ready to throw stones, he says, lay your stones down if you've not thought the same thing. Salvation, he saved her. And then salvation looks like this father who is longing for his lost son, who keeps looking out the window every day and finally sees his lost son, whom he could shorn and not even accept in his family. And the father runs to him and kisses him and throws him a party and gives him a robe and a ring and shoes. Salvation, that's radical. It's also like a shepherd that has 99 sheep and one's gone, and what does the shepherd do? He says, we'll forget about the one. No, he stops and he goes and gets the one. That's radical. It's about a farmer he's got this field and he's lost a coin, and he does whatever it takes to find the coin. The New Testament writers start to talk about that God has plans for salvation for the whole world, that he wants to bring the whole world back under his control, that he wants to reconcile all things, that he wants to take everything the way that it used to be before the fall and restore it back to Eden. Salvation, making the world better, becoming a place where God can come and reign. Salvation is radical, and it's massive, it's epic, it's huge. And the claims for you and I, if we claim to be saved, or a Christian, or a follower of Jesus, are just as radical. So I wonder about you. I wonder if you've had questions about salvation. Maybe you're new to this whole thing, don't understand the lingo, the saved, baptized, born again. Maybe you've been doing this for a while, and you might have some frustrations with the current way things are. Maybe questions like, I don't understand why Christians say one thing and act another. Or, I don't understand why, if all these people are saved, why there's so much injustice, and why there's war, and why there's poverty, and why there's sickness. Can I lose my salvation? Is salvation that I can earn? Can I pray the right thing, or say the right thing, or do the right thing to be saved? And if I am saved, does that guarantee me a spot in heaven? What kind of spot in heaven? Is it close? Is it in the back? Is it in the cheap seats? Is it in the nosebleeds? What kind of thing do we have going? There's a lot of questions surrounding salvation. And in our passage, Jesus here just got done with 4 or 5 short parables in his Olivet Discourse, almost one of his last sermons, about 3 days before the crucifixion here. And Jesus is taking a back seat in Jesus-style fashion, tearing parables, talking about other people. Oh, there was a man, there was a farmer, there was all this. And now here in the passage Molly shared with us, Jesus takes center stage. And we see this passage full of glory and clouds and lights and big old battle stuff. And Jesus says, when the Son of Man appears in judgment, with all the nations gathered around, there's angels, there's all kinds of folks. The first time Jesus talks about judgment, he says, you here on my right, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was sick and you healed me. I was in prison and you came and visited me. So you sheep, you go ahead for the kingdom that has been prepared for you since the beginning of time. You're blessed and righteous. And then with lightning and thunder and judgment time, he says, you guys over here, I was hungry and you didn't feed me. And I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I was sick and you were nowhere to be found. In fact, when I was in prison, you didn't come visit me. Depart from me for the kingdom that was prepared for you. Very interesting here. Jesus, of all the things he could judge us on, church attendance, Sunday school attendance, our tithe, don't judge me on that. All kinds of things. Jesus judges us on ordinary acts to those that are less fortunate. Very interesting. I figured he'd call out gossip or gambling addiction or lust or cheating or lying or stealing. Or he would commend them, you memorized the Bible. You didn't miss a Sunday school. You sat in your row every week for 30 years. In fact, you were there early for Christmas and Easter. But he said, ordinary things. I was hungry and you fed me. And of course, the people, they didn't understand because they said, Jesus, we've never seen you hungry. We've never seen you sick. We've never seen you in prison. We've never seen you thirsty. Jesus says, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. So a couple things from this passage stick out. The first is this: the poor, the oppressed, the least of these are on God's mind. While personal salvation is mentioned in the Scriptures more than any other topic, right around 2,300 times, closely second, 2,003 mentions from Genesis to Revelation, is how we respond to poor, oppressed, sick, broken, hurting people. This is on God's mind, and I suggest that if something's on God's mind, we better get behind it and figure out what we need to do. The next thing is this: in some weird way, when we care for the poor and the hurting, the least of these, the broken, we're caring for Jesus. And in some weird way, when we don't care for the hurting, poor, the broken, the least of these, we're withholding a caring hand to Jesus. Very serious stuff. Radical claims. Radical claims for us to own, for us to take, and for us to live out. So what do we do with all this? How do we do this? Is Jesus asking us here to sell everything we have and move to India and to sell all we have and go and give it all away? I don't think so, though he might. He's asking us to do ordinary things. I mean, let's think about something. My family's here today. If one of my family members was hungry, I would give them food. And if one of my family members was thirsty, I'd make sure they had something to drink. And if they were sick, I'd want to help them. So the things Jesus is asking us to do are very ordinary, but yet they're very radical. And so Jesus is calling us to be ordinary radicals. You say, ordinary radicals? What are you talking about? That's like clean dirt, jumbo shrimp, Texas Rangers pennant. It's just, it doesn't make sense what you're talking about. No, it does. We're called to do ordinary things that have radical impact. Mother Teresa said it like this: you can do no great things, only small things with great love. Ordinary, radical. That's cool. Ordinary, radical. Small things, great love. So it doesn't matter what you do, how much you do, where you do it, when you do it. It just matters the love that's behind it. So we're called to be ordinary radicals. Radical means root. People who look at the root of the way things are, the root of what it means to love, the root of how do we get in this mess that we're in, where 1 billion people live on less than $1 a day, where 35 people will die just in this service alone while we're here, that they don't have clean water, where every 3 seconds someone's dying from malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, lack of food, lack of water, lack of money. How did we get in this mess? And an ordinary radical goes, we got to fix it. So just a couple of thoughts. First is this: you and I have to begin doing small things with great love. Very simple, very easy. Small things with great love. St. Ignatius, he said, preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. The author James, he said, I will show you my faith by what I do. Faith without deeds is dead. When they asked Gandhi, they said, well, Gandhi, are you a Christian? What's going on? He said, go to the poor and the sick and the hurting, and they will tell you who the Christians are. Little acts of great love. There's people all around you, family members, friends, people in your circles, people that you work with, where you can bless. They're the least of these. We're all surrounded by the least of these. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, she said, Calcuttas are everywhere, regardless of the zip code or tax bracket. They're everywhere. There's people hurting. There's people that are the least of these wherever we go. Find your Calcutta. Find your place where people need little acts of love. Not only that, but when we start to take on this ordinary radical thing, we start to become different kinds of people. The call to Jesus in this passage, he's not saying, quit your job, quit everything you're doing, go and sell it all. He's calling us to do ordinary things. But what happens is we become different kinds of people. You say, what do you mean? For instance, you might be a doctor, okay? But really, you're not a doctor. You're a different kind of doctor. There's no longer this whole sacred, secular distinction between, well, I come to church, I'm a Christian, and then on Monday, I'm a doctor in my practice. No, that's not the case anymore because you're there and God is there. It's sacred. So you're not a doctor. You're just a different kind of doctor who's an ordinary radical. You look for ways that you can bless people. You look for ways that you can be a blessing to those that are the least of these that are hurting. You have a patient come in and you pray that God will give you wisdom and discernment on how to heal that person, how to touch that person, how to be a blessing to that person. You say, well, I'm a teacher. No, you're not a teacher. You're a different kind of teacher. You're an ordinary radical teacher. And so people come in and you say, you know what? For the time they're in this classroom, they're going to experience the love and the grace and acceptance of Jesus, regardless of the hells that they're going on at their house or the pressure that they're under. When they're in my room, they're going to have unconditional love, acceptance, and I'm going to challenge them to love God with their mind. I'm going to be there for them to talk to. I'm going to be there for them to lean on. I'm a different kind of teacher. You might say, well, I'm a coach. No, you're not just a coach. You're a different kind of coach because you're an ordinary radical, and so you're going to push kids to their limit, and you're going to expect the best out of them. And when they need a dad to talk to, or they need a mom to talk to, they need a friend, they need advice, you would be there for them. You pray for your kids when they're hurt. You take care of them. You're the type of coach that says, you know what, I'm going to challenge you and be all that you can be, and because you can do anything through Christ to give you strength, but you're a different kind of person because you're an ordinary radical. I mean, how cool would it be if, like, on business cards, we started having, like, Dusty Craig, Whitechapel, whatever, title, Ordinary Radical. I mean, that'd be kicking, right? Website, ordinaryradical.com. Don't buy it. I might go buy it. Okay, just there we go. You heard it here, copyright, right? Okay. And I mean, you know, I think I have a class reunion coming up or something. And what, you know, everybody talks about what they do, and everybody lies on that stuff, by the way. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a massive philanthropist, and I created the internet and HDTV. What if you put on there, I'm an ordinary radical? What? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a minister, but I'm a different kind of minister. Well, what do you mean? I don't know, I'm just kind of down with doing little acts of love that change the world. I mean, how cool is that? That's so cool. So, this is big stuff, folks. This is massive. Imagine the way you could change workplace. Imagine how fulfillment, and some of you might be frustrated with jobs and not happy. Man, this could bring a breath of fresh air into it. Where it's like, man, little acts of love. And all of a sudden, you do little acts of love, you do little acts of love, we do little acts of love, and all of a sudden there's this movement taking place of ordinary radicals all around. It's pretty cool. The other thing is this. We have this conception about salvation that it's the hymn, I don't know if you guys sing it, this world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. I used to sing it back in my Church of Christ days. And we think that for some reason we get saved and God helps us bear through earth, and then all of a sudden we get to heaven where it's streets of gold and McDonald's every meal and pizza for breakfast and stuff like that. Well, that's just not biblical. In the prayer we just prayed with Betsy, he said, your kingdom come, your will be done, where? On earth as it is in heaven. We start to understand that heaven is not some place that we long for and go for, and I can't wait till we get there, it's going to be cool, and I'm going to find out who the author of Hebrews is and all those different stuff like that. I can't wait. But heaven, we bring heaven to earth. Otherwise, why would Jesus have said, love your enemy? Pray for those who persecute you. If someone slaps you in the face, just turn and give them the other cheek, and someone wants you to go 1 mile with them, go 2. That's not very useful in heaven because Jesus was teaching us how to live. He was showing us that the best possible way to live is by taking my yoke upon you, my teaching upon you, and living in it. And so as ordinary radicals, we look for situations to bring heaven to earth. We believe that hell is a place void of God. I think we'd all agree on that, regardless if there's fire and weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth and a red pitchfork devil and things like that, but it's a place void of God. How many people in your life are living in hells? The friend of yours is going through just a nasty divorce. A friend of yours who just lost their mom or their child or their brother or sister, someone who can't pay the bills this month. As ordinary radicals, we bring heaven to earth. There's people surrounded by us, people, some of you might even be sitting next to somebody that needs some heaven in their earth right now. And the other thought I had about being ordinary radical is this. We've really got to change the way we look at poverty and suffering. course, change the way we look at poverty might mean we have to change the way we look at wealth. What I mean by this is Doris Day, she was a part of the Catholic worker movement. She said, if you have 2 coats and your friend has none, you're a thief. The early Christians, they thought that if Christians had food and another Christian was starving, they called them a murderer. So if we're going to become ordinary radical, we got to understand poverty and suffering in a new light. I mean, y'all, let's just be honest. We've got so much stuff. I've got 2 iPods, 2 cell phones, and every video game from Atari to Nintendo Wii. I don't need any of that stuff. I have so much stuff. I've got coats. I've got coats that don't fit. I got coats that are out of style. I got coats that smell like mothballs. I got coats that I don't even need. I don't even touch them. I don't even know that they're there. I have clothes, and y'all don't act like y'all don't do this. I have clothes in my closet that have price tags on them. That's a little overkill, I think. And I'll just confess here right now, I have a shoe problem. I'm just going to tell you, I don't know. I have big feet. It's hard for me to find shoes, and when I find shoes that don't look like, from 10 years ago, I'm on it. But man, why should I have so many shoes when my neighbor doesn't have any? I mean, between myself, my mom, my sister, we could open up a business and we could give away shoes and never run out. We would have them forever because there's just always new shoes coming in. There's just spring shoes and summer shoes and high heels and low heels and sandals and flip-flops and all those stuff. But we have so much stuff, y'all. And so if we're going to be ordinary radicals, we got to think about this. Is it right for me to have so many coats when so many people don't? Just a thought. We've got a guy that works on our youth staff, and he just went and got a new part-time job at this clothing store. And he came back. I said, well, dude, how's it going? And he said, man, such a mission field. I was like, what do you mean? I was kind of asking about your discount. Such a mission field. And he said, there are people all around me that need heaven brought into their lives. Ordinary radical. A friend of mine, she's starting a fun run for human trafficking. Because these people over in Asia are being traded for slaves, and they're being treated for less than their worth, and they don't have a value on their life. And so she said, you know what? I like to run. I don't like human trafficking. Let's do a fun run and raise some money. And she can't raise it all by herself, but if she does something and we do something and somebody else does something, we can start to make a difference. Ordinary radical. One of our youth volunteers, he is just obsessed with living a life that makes a difference. And he's been convicted about this passage from Matthew 25 and what it means for him, and as a businessman, what it means for him to live life. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to do something now about it. And he came up with this idea to where in a month, 7,000 families in Africa will have bug nets and clean water for the next year because of one simple, ordinary act. Some of our students, we said, you know what, there's kids that don't have shoes, and that's not right. And they responded, and there's a company called Tom's Shoes where, here's a business plan for you. For every pair of shoes I sell, I'm going to give one away. But he's an ordinary radical because in a month, 70,000 shoes are going to be dropped off in South America. Hundreds from kids from White's Chapel said, I'm going to buy these shoes so someone else can have some. Ordinary radical, small acts of great love. There's this middle school girl, and she's just hilarious. She was there at one of our craves where we talked about 1.org, this movement that wants to make poverty history. She will not leave me alone. She keeps MySpace in and text messaging me and Facebooking me and emailing me about this quarter, nickel, penny, dime drive for Guys Against Girls to raise money for 1.org. She says, well, they all live on less than $1 a day. I figure if we can give them $1, it'll help them live. Ordinary radical. Imagine what would happen if, as a church, we decided to become ordinary radicals. And what if we became the type of place where on Sunday we came to share stories with each other and celebrate the fact that we lived as ordinary radicals during the week? I mean, I could just imagine people coming in and going, okay, you're not going to do that. Guess what happened? I was going to work and I had like $5 on me, and all these cars were behind me, I decided to pay everyone's toll. It was the craziest thing because they were driving by going, who is paying my toll? And I went to the grocery store, and this poor mom, she had like 3 kids, and she had her card, and you could tell she was turning in coupons and food stamps and counting out how much she spent, and she had to take stuff back. And you know what? I said, hey, just let me take care of it. And a friend of mine, she just lost her house, and she has nowhere to stay, and we had this extra apartment up the street. And so guess what? For the week, she stayed in our apartment. How tight is that? What if we became the type of place that did that? Because that's radical salvation. There should be no time to come and talk about church politics or who's speaking where or how loud or soft or what style the music is or what's going on here, what's going on there, what's going on. Because we're so consumed with being an ordinary radical, and that stuff is petty. It doesn't matter. Because we're called to be ordinary radicals. So, will you join the likes of Miles and Jessica and Lauren and Tom from Tom's Shoes and One.org and these people that are taking up this crazy message about being ordinary radical? That we're living as if poverty can be ended and disease can be stopped, and that we can actually minister to the least of these because of small acts of great love, because Jesus has big, big, big plans for us. So I invite you to join this revolution. Pray that God would start to speak to your heart today. Start to show things now to where he wants you to be an ordinary radical in. Let's pray. God, we thank you that you've given us the possibility to team up with you and make a difference. God, I pray for each person here today that we would all understand what it means to live a radical life, to live a life that's been changed by your salvation, and that you'd help us become ordinary radicals, that you would help us to change the world through acts of love and kindness. Pray that you would help us to understand that the least of these are all around, that you would help us to minister to them and find needs that we can meet. We thank you for all these and the ways that you bless us and take care of us. Help us on this journey. In your name we pray.